Hello, everybody. I want us to take a look at this PowerPoint today. This is a PowerPoint over the basics of special education, specifically focusing in on laws, rules, and regulations. And so that's what we're going to look at today. This slide is a pie chart of all the different disability categories in special education that we see. If you look at it closely, you'll see this is um, the majority of the students that are identified with disabilities are the students with learning disabilities. And then we see that's about 45%. And then all the others fit into that other 55% of students with disabilities. When we think about students with disabilities, this pie chart represents about 12 to 15% of the population in a general education program. So it's a pretty significant percentage. The takeaway from this slide is that you will encounter kids with disabilities in all walks of life, in a general ed program, in a special ed program, in uh, non educational activities and extracurricular activities. The kids with disabilities are everywhere. So we need to be aware of each of those pieces as we go forward. This slide is I want you to kind of think about how it all fits together. You've got federal laws, you've got state laws, and you have local district policy, and how they all go together. Think about you've just bought a brand new puzzle, and the outside, and you've taken the puzzle and you've opened the box and you've dumped the box of puzzle pieces out onto the table. After turning them all over to the picture side, the first thing that you would do is create the frame of the puzzle. Federal law, IDEA, the ADA, all these different laws are frameworks. They represent the frame of the puzzle. Everything that the all the frame of everything that would go into that puzzle and how far they would go are in that framework. That is federal law. State law is where each state has taken that framework and have identified all the processes they need to apply, and those are the pieces that go in the middle of the puzzle. Local district policy is how the picture looks and how the pieces go together to make the picture appropriate. So that's how federal law, state law, and local district policy all fit together neatly into that puzzle. So the federal laws that we'll look at are Section 504, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act. They added the I in 2004. It was originally changed to IDEA back in 1990. And before that, it was the Education for the Handicapped Act of 1975. We'll also talk a little bit about Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, and then also the Education Act, Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, which was No Child Left Behind, which was originally the Elementary Secondary Education Act of 1965, that President Johnson signed into law, saying that we have to have an education system in the states for all children. So those are the laws that we will mostly talk about in this presentation. Now let's take a look at Section 504 real quickly. Section 504 was passed in 1973. It was an outcome of the Brown versus Board of Education, which eliminated discrimination. This is eliminating discrimination for individuals with a handicapping condition in any program that has federal financial aid. So it's an OCR, Office of Civil Rights Law. It is a discrimination law. You will have students that are meeting the requirements of Section 504, where you'll be providing accommodations under Section 504 in the schools. So that is an umbrella law for everything else we do with kids with disabilities. Section 504, an idea. So if you think of 504 is the umbrella law. IDEA is the particulars of the times in the umbrella that hold the umbrella up. It specifically identifies disability categories, provides funding, provides oversight, all those things that is IDEA. So in the world of special education, that's where we live, in the IDEA world. And I'm going to just say IDEA instead of IDEIA because the I just makes it confusing. So IDEA was originally the Education of the Handicapped Act passed in 1975, and this law provides funding in specific disability categories, but it still fits under the anti-discrimination law of Section 504. So that's really important how it all fits. Now, let's look at this visual and understand how it all fits together when we look at the schools. The big cloud that you're looking at there are all children. Every single child that walks into the school district and school, with or without a disability, general ed kids, to kids that are gifted and talented, to kids with behavioral disorders, with kids with any disorder. That's the big cloud. But kids that are being served under Section 504 is the circle. They are first and foremost general education students, then they're also served under Section 504. We can say the same thing of kids under IDEA. They are first and foremost general ed kids, then they are protected under Section 504, then they are protected and served under IDEA. But they're general ed kids first. That's where we begin. All decisions have to be made with the thought that it's very likely the student will be served in the general education classroom without any kind of modifications or accommodations, and very, very important. All right. Back at Section 504, this is the definition of a handicapped child or individual under Section 504, kind of loosey-goosey. They either have a physical impairment, have a record of, or is regarded as such. And we make that determination in the Section 504 team meetings. And so it's very important to think that through. That's the language. ADA uses the same language, have a physical or mental impairment, has a record, or is regarded as having such. Important pieces of that puzzle. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a very interesting one. Americans with Disabilities Act is an accessibility act, and that's important for us to think about too. That's where we started seeing all the cutaways on the sidewalk, elevators, ramps, all sorts of things like that. It came because of the ADA. And we are held to a higher standard to make sure that we have accessibility. It could be not only accessibility to something, but using technology or using other accessible avenues for students. Very important. Let's go back to IDEA and the special ed law. We have the federal regulations that give us much more guidance. The law is kind of the framework, and then the regulations give us more information, so more information to fill in the puzzle. Let's look at we'll look at some life stages of these in just a minute. You'll see that IDEA is kids are served from ages birth through their 21st birthday. The kids with visual impairments and auditory impairments are served at birth through 21. All the rest of the kids are identified and served from ages 3 through 21. Section 504 is a lifelong law from birth to death, or cradle to grave, and the same with ADA, from cradle to grave. But IDEA stops at 21, or when the student has a change of placement and moves out of the K to 12 education system. Does not is not covered in college. 504 and ADA does cover those kids. So through their 21st birthday, if a student doesn't graduate before 21, we say they age out. So that's the age ranges for these laws. So this is the very first sentence in the regulations of IDEA. If we look at it, it says, to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education, a FAPE. That's a very important element. We'll see that in the Andrew versus the Board of Ed that just passed the Supreme Court in 2017. Really holds us to a higher standard of FAPE. Continuing with this statement, so to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. It's a huge charge. It's a charge we should have for every single child that walks into our educational system. But for the most part, we need to remember this is special education. Not only do we need to look at academics, but we look at all educational needs of students, such as social, emotional, behavioral, vocational, living, functional, on and on and on. It broadens the definition of educational needs for these students. Now then, these are the state laws. We have the Texas Education Code and the Texas Administrative Code. All states have their own versions of these, but since we're in Texas, we're going to talk about these. They tell you all the puzzle pieces of what needs to go in the middle of the puzzle. So this is all these laws. When we look at this one right here, chapter 89, that is the Special Education Commissioner's rules on special education in Texas. Very interesting. Read through that when you have some time. Good stuff. So what does that mean for you as an educator, a diagnostician, a dyslexia specialist, whatever your role is in education? Let's take a look at those pieces. This is where local district policy determines how things are implemented at the local level. So that's where we start looking at those elements. Many of these systems are going to be in place, student intervention teams, RTI teams, IEP teams. In Texas, we call them ARDs. All of these are going to be involved in the identification and development of an individual education program for a student being served, either an IEP under Section 504 or an IEP under IDEA, either way. Student intervention teams are also called IEP teams. They are part of the general education process. They must be fully tried of everything that's possible for a child without a disability before we consider things that for students with disabilities. So if you read through this law, it's very specific, this portion, very specific, and you must collect data. And right there it says that this will be part of the general ed education referral or screening system, and it must be considered all things that you try or have available to all students. And then if it doesn't make changes for the student, then you must refer the student for a full individual evaluation to consider services in special education. And that's the process. When this is the tier process, you have tier 1 students, and that's all the students that are in school should be at Tier 1. Tier 2 are students that are not making progress in the general process at Tier 1, and Tier 3 are the ones that are not making progress at Tier 2. However, your school district sets this up is really important. And you must assess in all areas of suspected disabilities, including the following things: health, vision, hearing, intelligence, reading, math, adaptive behavior, written language, communication, behavior, emotional, motor, etc. Once you've tried everything, then you need to be involved in making the referral for a full individual evaluation. General ed teacher responsibilities, they need to provide all that information from the RTI team forward: what interventions were used, how they were used, were they effective or not, etc. They were all there. Then we create the evaluation, builds the pyramid for the ARD decision-making process. Then you meet. The ARD meeting has specific responsibilities. They determine eligibility of an individual. They determine educational need. They develop goals and objectives. And they determine special education or specially designed instruction to meet the needs of the student. So you have evaluation, then you determine educational need, then you identify what services to be provided. We talk about who's required to attend the IEP meetings or the ARD meetings. That is, the required members are general ed teacher of the child, special ed teacher of the child, the parents, the administration, and somebody to interpret evaluation results. If the parents don't attend and you've provided appropriate notice, then you're fine to move ahead and continue with the meeting. It's okay to do that, as long as you've provided appropriate notice for the parent. So an IEP, this is what an IEP is. We've got it, special education electronic processes now, usually eSped or other processes that whatever your district is using, that provides written documentation. You must give a parent a written document, and every teacher that works with a student that has an educational need should have their portion of the IEP in a written format. Then we must have annual goals in there. These are the description of that. Specially designed instruction, goals and objectives, and the goals and objectives must be measurable. This is an example. And we must have that in the IEP, and there must be an explanation how the child will be involved in and making progress in the general education curriculum. Then there must be a statement of the program's modifications, supports, etc. for the child. And so we're going to talk real quickly about accommodate, modify, and adapt. Accommodate's much different than modify. Adapt is very similar to accommodate, but modify is very different. There is in your files an activity you can kind of go through, and I'll create another video for you to look at it. Is it an accommodation or not? And we'll talk through that one a little bit later. But let's just get some understanding. Accommodate is this. It's to make fit or suitable, make, adapt, or adjust. It's how you access information, how you demonstrate knowledge. The main thing for accommodate is that it doesn't change the content. It provides access to learning, provides access and understanding of demonstrating the learning, and it varies in intensity and degree. Important pieces of that accommodate. Modify now changes or alters things. It changes in what a student is expected to learn and demonstrate. Um, it changes the content or the benchmark and changes the number of key concepts mastered. This is very important piece that you need to understand that you can only modify a student's educational program if they are under an IEP in IDEA. Section 504 is accommodate or adapt only, it's not modify. So modify only happens for students with special needs under IDEA. Adaption is very similar to accommodate. It doesn't change the content, only changes what equipment, materials, tools, and technology. An example is an adapted cockpit. Modification sheets usually look at these things here, and that's where we get this information from the IEP document, and it goes to the appropriate people. Supplementary aids and services. There must be a statement of supplementary aids and services to be provided to the child and then are on behalf of the child. Here's an interesting thing. Training for you as a teacher or interventionist or a specialist that you need to implement a program for a child is a supplementary related service to the child on behalf of the child. So you should request that training at an IEP meeting if you don't know how to implement that particular program. So you are empowered to do that. So and then we look at the least restrictive environment. So we go through the steps: evaluation, educational need, and where is that child's best placement going to be. This is the federal regs on least restrictive environment. I'll let you read through that. So basically, before you decide where the student is best served, you have to decide what is the best or what they need. So the discussion begins with the student's general education classroom first and foremost. And these are some instructional arrangements for us to think about. And so we can see how all these puzzle pieces go together to serve kids with special needs. Finally, a quick word about FERPA. FERPA is the Family Education Rights Privacy Act. All records in educational records are housed and are kept confidential under FERPA, not HIPAA. And you must get consent from parents if you're sharing records with people that do not have an educational need to know within the educational setting of the child. If they have an educational need to know, then FERPA allows for that portion of their record to go to that person. But for the most part, you need to get consent from the parents to share records. Very, very important. Can get you in trouble if you don't follow through. All right, I hope that's helped you. That was just a quick overview of all the pieces of the puzzles where it comes to students with special needs. Thank you very much for your time.